Okay, welcome. It is Tuesday, October 26th, 2021. The time is currently 8:17 a.m. We will begin with a roll call. My name is Melanie Hall, Board President.
I am Rebecca Nielsen, Board Vice President.
Jennifer Partridge, Board Member.
Tina Hales, Board Member.
McKay Jensen, Board Member.
Terry McCabe, Board Member.
Derek Anderson, Business Administrator.
Keith Hertel, Superintendent.
All right, is there a motion to convene the business meeting?
I move that we convene our business meeting.
Okay. Keith Hertel, will you do the Pledge of Allegiance?
We'll have a virtual flag up here.
Oh, yeah.
There we go.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, next we have been given, I'm just actually going to turn the time over to you.
Okay.
And then we'll go from there.
Okay. The board has received an offer to purchase the current Wasatch property, Wasatch Elementary School property on 900 East. The purchaser, the desired purchaser is Brigham Young University. This would involve a land exchange in addition to sale. They would purchase the property from the school district, and they would, in exchange, give us approximately $3.5 million, and also the Locust Lane property about 3 blocks to the east, which would be then used to rebuild a new Wasatch Elementary School there. So that's the transaction that's proposed, and this is for the board's consideration and approval or non-approval today.
Is there a motion?
I have questions.
Well, let's have a motion first, and then we can have discussion about it.
I move that we enter into a letter of intent with Brigham Young University with final documents to be approved in a future business meeting.
So say it one more time.
I move that we enter into a letter of intent with Brigham Young University regarding a sale of the property on 9th East, the Wasatch Elementary property.
And that was made by Board Member Jensen and a second by Board Member Partridge. Not Partridge, Nielsen. Thank you.
Okay, we get confused all
It's cool, I know people mix this up. I know who you are. So, all right, is there any further discussion on this motion?
I have questions.
Okay.
So on the appraised value for Locust Lane, it said that it was worth $5.9 million, and Wasatch Elementary was worth $6.56 million. So does that include the building on Wasatch Elementary School or just the land?
The building and the land.
Okay. So what's the exact acreage of each property then?
I don't have that in front of me. Okay, do you remember?
Yeah, so it's 10.1 the Wasatch property and 12.2 on the Locust Lane property.
And why was the Wasatch property separated into east-west parcels?
Those are county parcels. Those are the how it's deeded. They're parcels that we own. Those two, they're divided parcels by the county, sort of in the records. That's how that was. The property was originally purchased by the district. It's 2 parcels.
We have a number of properties that are like that, divided into multiple parcels.
And that was done by the county then?
At least, I don't know.
And it goes back to the original transactions, right, where the property came from and their provenance, where, you know, who had them when they came to us. So.
Okay. My last question is, why is BYU insisting that Foxfield be attached to every contract the school district has?
All I can tell you is I think BYU has a great interest in Foxfield. They would like to expand. As you know, the board has expressed no interest in selling Fox Field at the present time. That could change in the future, but as of right now, that is not even on the table. But I think BYU is hoping that at some point in the future the board may be amenable to that. And I can't speak for them, but I'm pretty sure that's what their concern is.
So for my opinion, I'm gonna vote no on this because that paragraph about Fox Field needs to be eliminated. This is about Locust Lane and Wasatch property. It's not about Fox. So when that paragraph is eliminated, then I will vote yes for it.
All right, any other further discussion on this motion? All right, go ahead, Jen.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think overall this is a good idea. I think moving the school back to the Locust Lane property and building on a fresh site is great. And overall, I like the terms of the negotiation, but I do have some reservations about what Terry brought up with the giving them an opportunity to make the first offer if we were to ever sell Fox Field, which we are not doing right now, but I just want to make sure that if and when that time ever comes, that anybody who's interested in the property has an opportunity to make a bid on it, and that it's a fair, even playing field at that point. So I am concerned and wondering, can we amend what has been negotiated so far and vote on something different today?
I mean, it's our timeline. So one way of looking at that is there are very few people that will treat sort of interest on the field, not even getting this property, as an asset. And so is it in the public's interest not to exchange this asset or just go, okay, that's like, you have an opportunity to gain substantial capital on an asset that nobody else is interested in buying. So you're basically turning away money from the public. So if you're a taxpayer, you're saying, oh yeah, BYU is going to give us money that can expire, that is a communication that goes along with other timetables, but you just turn that money away. Was that a good use of taxpayer dollars? That was money that was offered to the district for an asset that, yep, they get something out of it, they get some conversations out of it, but given a timeline that it can expire, nobody else is going to give us that money. But that's money we had a chance to collect from BYU. We don't have a lot of chances to collect from BYU. That's the public's complaint, is that BYU doesn't pay taxes. The church owns a lot of property in the city. So how do we collect money from BYU? This is one spot that we can do that. And if we continue to say no, we don't, then BYU continues just to be something in the community that doesn't really. This is a way that they can contribute, but they get some value back, and that value is just communicate with us.
So procedurally, we have a motion on the floor that has to be voted on. If it goes down, somebody could propose an alternate motion to amend this with that paragraph removed. And then we'd have to go back to the drawing table with BYU to discuss that. But those two things are, I think, considerations for where we are right now in the discussion.
For the record, I am also concerned about that. I'm still deciding in my head whether it's enough for me to vote against it or not, because I do think moving the school is probably, we can make it work, probably a better location for the kids and the faculty. But I also, and I understand the case, I understand all of that. I just share their concern.
Do we want to be clear too also that right of first offer is not the same as right of
Right
first
of
refusal.
first refusal.
So
yeah.
we're not giving right of first refusal. Right of
That's
first
right.
offer means we can
We
set the
can set
price
the price.
and they can either agree or disagree.
But then if they don't take that price, I mean, basically, if it comes down to being around the same price, BYU still has first dibs on that, right?
If they
If they
like
agree
the
with
If
price
it comes
that
within
we set.
95% of something.
So if, we just need to, again, it's one last bidding thing, I guess. So if it comes within 95%, we just need to let them know, to say, hey, you know, by the way, that didn't come down. The reason that they would, you know, if we offer, if we set a price and say this is what this is for sale at, it seems fair that and we won't pay that, but we accept someone else's offer for substantially less than that. 5%, again, if it's 100% of that offer, we don't have to go back to BYU. It's 95, but if it's 5% lower, that seems substantial. Wouldn't it be fair to go, yeah, this is, you know, we were trying to save 5% too. We should at least be in the bidding again. So it stops, if anything, it stops, what their main concern about is that, is I guess even what they can be, the assumption is that all of these things happen behind closed doors, and they're just making sure that no, this really isn't a closed door process. This has to be at least two parties involved, and they want to be one of those parties. If there's two parties involved, they're ensuring that there are at least two parties, and they will at least be one of those. Versus, you know, if somebody comes in with an exclusive deal and says, hey, it just doesn't happen quickly. They just want to have the opportunity. So.
Okay, any further discussion on this motion?
I'm like Gina, I'm kind of on the fence because of that portion of it. What do you envision happens if we take that part out? We go to negotiation for a lot longer on this?
Yeah, there's gonna have to be some communication back and forth, you know, still. And I think, I mean, we've extended our timeline. So one thing about it is that by continue to extend our timeline, it sort of locks us into eventually doing it. So does that, you know, because we're spending money on that other property just in the timeline. So we sort of need to decide, you know, is the traffic in the neighborhood, you know, the kids, are those worth it? Are those things sort of worth it? It increases their position to say, hey, look, you're really going to need this, and it seems like you're still committed because you're expending inflationary dollars by waiting. You're expending other dollars, or we're just, you know, I'm sure that, you know, we could take I mean, if the amendment, if it's gone, or if there's an amendment that it's, I mean, we can take it back to them if that's what you want to approve. So you can amend, and we'll see how they respond. And
We don't know if it's a deal breaker or not.
yeah.
But we could go back and talk to them, and then whatever needs to go into the final purchase and sale agreement will, with that, of course, will also be approved by the board.
Yeah, this is, you know, deciding to move forward or deciding to, nope. So.
This is a big but preliminary step.
I just want to remind everyone too, we're not selling Foxville. It's not for sale. We don't plan to sell it. This is if in the event. So.
And there are, and I mean, and again, there are time deadlines on even the right of first offer.
Right.
So.
Yeah. All right, any further discussion on this? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of the motion indicate with aye.
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 All those opposed?
Nay.
All right, the motion passes 5-1. So, all right. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right. We're just being on the same YouTube feed, right?
Yep.
Are we? Okay. All right, welcome. We are convened as the Provo City School District Board of Education. It is Tuesday, October 26, 2021, and it is currently 8:35 a.m. We will begin with a roll call. Melanie Hall, Board President.
Jennifer Partridge, board member.
Gina Hales, board member.
PK Jensen, board member.
Terry Cave, board member.
Derek Anderson, business administrator.
Keith Patel, superintendent.
All right, is there a motion to convene the study session?
I move that we convene the study session.
All right. Do you want to start, or you want me to just turn over to Doug?
Yep.
Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, thank you. You have in your board docs two documents that one is a historical enrollment report by school, and the assignment was given to me through you, I think through the superintendent, from you to give you some data as it relates to some historical trends regarding enrollment. And so that is a 9-year history based on October 1 counts. And then the second document that you had in your file is one that we generate every year in student services, and it relates to school capacity. We use that as it relates to open enrollment choices, whether school is open or closed, and it takes into it the maximum capacity of the building and also the FTE that's allotted, so we know the staffing. So I don't have probably a ton to share, other than just I'm hoping that the data was helpful, including the accompanying charts that helped you see kind of trend lines, and just want to utilize this time for question and answer.
Can you explain to people who are watching on YouTube what an FET is? Or did I get that right? I probably didn't say it right.
No, that's just right, Terry. An FTE is a full-time equivalent. It's essentially language used in Utah for a contract of a staff member. So someone who's working 40 hours or the equivalent of a full-time employee. And so when we, in that chart, we talk about the number of FTEs given to a school. That generally is the number of teaching staff members that are working with the general population of the school.
So when I was looking at some of these numbers, one concern that I'm seeing is we have a couple of elementaries that are in the 300s, or projected to be in the 300s. Do we have a minimum requirement for a school to stay open? I know nobody wants to talk about closing schools, nothing like that, but it concerns me when numbers start going low. Is there something that we have that we say this is the minimum requirement?
I'm not aware of any current stipulation that says that this is the minimum number of students before we'd say that that school is in jeopardy of not being a school. I mean, our e-school program is not a brick and mortar location, but it has about 100 students in it, K through 8 currently. You're right, there are two of our brick and mortar schools. I think specifically, it's Franklin Elementary School and maybe Spring Creek Elementary School, that are a little bit lower in their enrollment. Those trends, as you can see, haven't always been that way. It's really hard to put too much stock in the numbers that are coming out of the COVID year and then the response back. It is helpful to see what happened in 2020 and now what's happening in 2021. Some schools bounce back faster and better than others. But you're right, there certainly is a concern and a question that the board ought to talk, and particularly with the business manager. I know he has feelings about the overhead that it takes to run a building associated with the staffing and just the maintenance of the building as per student that's in that building. It's definitely not the most efficient model, one would argue, but is that commitment to neighborhood schools. I think that you have to weigh in the balance on that decision.
Well, I would say on these schools, they're all in areas where we're seeing some growth in housing, or we're about to see some, or they're right on the border that maybe we could adjust boundaries if needed. So that at least it's good to know we have capacity for the growth that is coming.
Yeah, I'm just wondering though if it's something that we want to ask council to maybe start looking into what would be the minimum requirement to keep a school open, the brick and mortar school open.
Yeah,
So-
and whatever that minimum would be based on, right, go ahead, Keith, sorry.
Yeah, we could do that, and I came here from a district that had a couple of very, very, very small schools, and so it's hard to run a school if you don't have sufficient minimum staffing. So we could certainly develop a procedure for putting together a guide along that line. Small schools, such as a couple of the ones we have on here, we would have, for sure, we would have X number of teachers and X number of librarians and those kinds of things, and just to really define it and then let it sit that way for a few years and determine are there qualitative effectiveness items on that, or is it just not an efficient way to do business? We don't know because we haven't collected the data, because we really haven't had small schools until last year due to COVID, and now this year the residual impact of COVID. So, but we could certainly put something together for you, and I've got a model from my previous district that we could use.
Gina?
I'm a little worried about Franklin. It has the lowest numbers, but I'm worried I think we need to do that analysis, but I feel like Spring Creek comes into the Franklin boundaries. Like if we were to have typical school boundaries, Spring Creek has kind of come in on that. I know Spring Creek is also one of the low numbers, and I'm not advocating for closing any schools, but I am a little bit worried that Franklin Elementary, we're going to have this conversation, we're going to decide that Franklin should be closed or it's not cost effective or whatever, but I don't think that's the full picture, because I think we've taken some students from Franklin boundaries to build up Spring Creek numbers. So if we do that, I would like to request that we take a look at the boundaries as well.
Yeah, and district administration is not recommending closure of any buildings at this time. So we're recommending a study and sufficient funding to be able to continue to run programs, and then after a period of time, then we will bring that back to you, and then we'll have to have some, if it's not working, we'll have to have some hard discussions, but as of right now, there's nothing on the table.
Okay.
Boundaries are certainly a concern, and I'm glad you brought that up, Gina, because when you set an enrollment area for a school, then that somewhat impacts who's going to see that as their neighborhood school. In this era, over the last 10 or 15 years of school choice, though, with open enrollment, that really has kind of blurred some of the lines in terms of where someone says, this is where I'll go to school, right? I was just in preparation for today, ran this report on the number of students who are currently enrolled within the school boundary, but not attending that local school, but somewhere else, say in the district. We can't necessarily track because we don't have access to the records of a charter school or another school district that might have picked up a school. But for instance, in the Franklin school district, Franklin neighborhood right now, we have 144 of the students who live in that neighborhood that don't attend that school but attend somewhere else within our district. In the same time, they pick up 88 students who don't live in their boundaries who come and choice into Franklin. So there's a net loss there, you can see, of about 60 students, but that kind of ebb and flow between students not living in a boundary, but yet for either a program there, it could be daycare that's in the area. There's a number of different reasons we see in student services to why someone opts to go to a school besides their boundary. So the boundary adjustment is certainly a conversation to have, but it's in this day and age of people being able to essentially open enroll their students to the school of their desire. It doesn't necessarily solve the problem for you. I mean,
No, and
right?
I'm not saying it would. I'm just saying I would like it to be part of whatever it is we're looking at. I would like to see that be part of what we're studying.
Right.
That's all I'm asking.
Yeah. And then there's certain schools that have certainly been buoyed up, and I say this from my own personal experience, having worked at an immersion school. A school like Edgemont, for instance, has 215 kids that attend their school that don't live in their boundaries, and that's based on their French immersion program. That's 33% of their enrollment. So you can see that enrollment can really be fluctuated by having kind of magnet or programs that attract students that come too. So it is a very complex conversation. It's hard to get into in just a few minutes all the intricate details associated with this, but again, wanted to just report so we can maybe begin a conversation as we make decisions. In the November meeting, we typically like to have your approval to see that other report that maybe is not in front of you right now, but the one about school capacity, because we do need to make some decisions, because open enrollment opens December 1st for the next school year, I'll be coming to you probably in the study session or something in November to ask for some advisement as it relates to schools being open or closed, or how we might need to adjust any of the capacities of our building to deal with the enrollment projections we have.
So do you ask parents why they want to switch their kids to another school that's not for the dual language immersion?
Typically, the application does contain that, but is not a required field. Open enrollment does not say that you have to give any sort of a justifiable reason as to why you want to attend a different school. When we call it school choice, it really is parents' choice of school, not school's choice as to whether they want to take the kids and the parent or not. So it is not a qualifier. I do believe that we have, as an elective optional field, some people fill that out and say, hey, daycare is in the area, or just really hear that's a great reputation of that school, and so we get a variety of different answers, yes.
We did fairly aggressively try to seek that information about 7 years ago. Student Services was actively, and the principals were actively trying to get that information, but the reality is it was pretty spotty. What Doug has represented here is about what we saw. There wasn't a consistent amount of response, but we did hear things like daycare or convenience or location to my home or those kinds of things, location to work.
Looking at these numbers when you're talking about capacity, I'm looking at the open enrollment availability in our secondary schools is not there.
Yeah, our secondary enrollment, if you go back to those enrollment charts, there's a positive trend that we've had in grades 7 through 12 for the past number of years, right? And so thus the projects of rebuild at Provo High certainly try to get in front of that. The rebuilds that's going on at Timpview is trying to certainly get in front of the idea that that's where you've got limited capacity for the building itself. For instance, the pinch point right now is Timpview High School. And add to the idea that, that it's under construction, it is really quite a conundrum of sorts, right? That we have students who want to go there, but the building has its limitations, parking has its limitations, so on and so forth. So a rebuild that increases that capacity is certainly something that I know is part of the planning that you and our facilities manager's been thinking about. But yeah, secondary schools is certainly something to watch. So like I said, I would anticipate if we're going to talk about potentially closing a school or thinking about capacity within one of our schools, the secondary schools will certainly need to be on our topic for next month. You'll see also in that report there's one elementary school that's kind of at that capacity or within that 90% range, and that would be Edgemont Elementary School. And again, it's a recently rebuilt school. It's very vibrant in what's going on there in terms of having both a STEM and an immersion program, and they're retaining enrollment pretty well in that neighborhood right now. That's the one that probably is in that red zone of saying, do we need to watch that enrollment number? So, but again, there's a lot here we could digest. We only had a few minutes. I wanted to just see what assignments I could take from you to further the conversation, just anticipating the November conversation about open enrollment is one we schedule with you every year.
Okay, Gina?
I would be interested in hearing maybe in November what are our best guesses, informed guesses, as to why our elementary school totals seem to have gone down significantly. What is that, about 1,200? Looks like secondary is maintaining, so I'm curious to know what that is about. And our secondary seems to be just a tad higher, so pretty much maintaining. And if that's a trend or what we need to be looking at with that.
Yeah, I'll look into that. It's very difficult to access where kids go when that's not our data to look at, right? And the proliferation of more charter schools and charter schools that serve primarily K-6 in the neighborhoods have been certainly a piece of evidence. But otherwise, I don't want to just anecdotally handle. I'll look if I can find some more information, Gina, because that is a great question.
So one of my questions is, we keep saying, the data keeps saying Provo is growing, right? And so are there more kids in Provo, or are there not really more kids, or is our enrollment, is our Provo's population growing? Like, do we have a bunch of kids and they're just not coming?
Yeah, there's other games in town besides the Provo City School District for Education would be my guess, because like you say, I think the enrollment from census numbers would say there's more kids here. We're not necessarily see them in the K-6, so I'll see if I can't find out something that quantifies an idea of the number of different educational opportunities that are out there and what their capacity might be. Give me a little time and I'll see if I can give us some scenarios to look at.
And then do they come back, like if they do choose opt out some other time, are they opting in for high school?
That seems to be one of the trends, and I'll see if I can't find data behind that, because of the richness of the experiences we offer, including the extracurricular piece that's really more vibrant here than, say, at a smaller charter school, is, from my experience as a high school principal, and maybe the superintendent would say the same, is a reason why we see a kind of a return to our enrollment in the middle and high schools.
Okay, thank you.
So, thank
Okay.
you.
Any other further questions? All right, thank you, Doug. Calendar survey process, Jason Cox.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to discuss the calendar. I jokingly mentioned to the superintendent the other day, before we discuss Dixon on a regular basis, calendar was the hottest topic. So I always wonder why. I mean, I know it's very important that we get school started in a time frame people like and ended in a time frame people like. We're actually in the middle of our process right now, and I just wanted to review that with you. We first start by meeting with the K-16 Alliance, which involves local universities and the local school districts to review calendars and ideas together over how each school district comes up with their calendar, how far out they project their calendar, and when they take it to the school board. We ran through that process with everyone recently. Our K-16 meeting was actually last week. After the meeting, Caleb and I worked together to send out the first survey of 2 surveys. The first one asked preference on what people would like to prioritize as far as seeing in the survey. Would they like us to make sure that there's a 2-week winter break, a full spring break, start sometime in August later than, as late as possible, and before Memorial Day. Those are options for people to choose from. And I want to make sure I publicly thank both Caleb and Maria from my office, Maria Mejia Ledesma. She is the one who actually generates the calendars for the school district. So she creates the options and the different things. And so we take the data that'll come in. That first survey is scheduled to close in the first week of November. We'll take that information and generate 2 options of calendars to then put back out to the public for their vote. There's usually not a lot of difference between the 2 calendars, maybe a day or 2 difference in start and end date because of those preferences that they've already voted on. So it doesn't give us a lot of room to move. But then once we create those 2 calendar options, we post those again for vote. We usually leave those open for about 3 weeks, and then we bring the information back to you as a school board, usually in the December school board meeting, for you to review the information based on the community vote and choose for the 23-24 school year, which is the one we'll be bringing to you this time. You've approved next year's calendar already, so we usually stay on a rotation of doing about an 18-month ahead of time calendar posting for that future year. Families like that because they can plan vacations and different things around when the school year is going to be scheduled. That's our process. Any questions or suggestions for me or for that team that I suggested? You bet.
So, I had heard that Alpine was doing professional development days the Monday after time change. So I went and asked everyone at the 3 schools I represent, and the emails I got back was everybody said, yes, absolutely in March we need to have that Monday for professional development for the kids. They need it in March. And in November they said, yeah, it would be nice. The 2 answers were yes, and the other answer was, yeah, it would be nice, but if it's going to take away from other calendar opportunities, then no. But March was an overwhelming must from what I got.
You
Terry,
bet.
sorry, I was just
No, go
going to
ahead.
say, from what I understand, we decided as a board and as a council that we wanted to do it earlier than March, so that the teachers could implement what they're learning earlier, because March is towards the end of the school year.
This was just a question I asked them, and the teachers, this was the responses I got.
Okay, and we appreciate that, but I'm just telling you why we've been doing it the way we've been doing it.
And along with that, we know that attaching the professional development day to a long weekend, as we've been doing for the last few years, so we do it we
Fall
have
break,
4 days.
President's Day.
Fall break, President's Day, and there's one more in
And Martin
January.
Luther King Day.
And doing that, families are really happy with that. So But I was thinking about, because you and I exchanged emails about that, I was wondering about, rather than doing a professional development day on the Monday after we changed back to daylight savings time, would there be possibility of maybe just doing a late start that day? Because it would potentially take into consideration the circadian rhythm concerns that a lot of parents have worries about.
Yeah,
So
I
we could
see
definitely
a
look
lot
at
of
that.
complaints over that weekend, that next Monday. Parents are always complaining.
Not just parents.
And teachers
Yeah.
over
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
Monday, yeah.
Yeah, we
So-
absolutely appreciate the feedback.
If I'm remembering right, in the past when the 2 calendar options have gone out, it has not included the professional development days. And I'm just wondering, if we know that we want to keep that going, could we include that so that parents keep that in mind when they are deciding on the calendar, that, oh, fall break's really not 3 days off, it's going to be 4 for us. That helps me know, do I want that shorter option or the long, if that's where the difference is.
Yeah, we definitely can work on that. I think one of the things that keeps us a little bit behind doing that part of it is that we take the input from the schools based on their days of their SEPs and different things like that. The other part of it is that the school district requests a waiver specifically for the professional development days, and so we usually don't plug them in until we're close to that actual calendar school year. But that doesn't mean we can't work on trying to do it a little bit earlier. Anne-Marie and I can, because she works on the professional development side, setting those dates. So that's, to your point, there's kind of 2 pieces to this where the public sees a lot of the calendar that is around when their kids will be attending. The faculty and the professional staff, they work on professional development days, before school starting days that'll be contract days for people, different things like that that are in addition to what the public sees because it's about their kids attending. So there's a couple of different pieces to put together there to try to work out getting those professional development days in a little sooner. But I'll definitely work on that.
Okay. Any other further questions for Jason? All right, thank you very much.
Yeah.
The last thing on our agenda is school assignments. We just need to make one adjustment for which board members are over what schools. Provo High is now currently in Rebecca's, and so Rebecca will now be over Provo High, and she's aware of that even though she's not here. So she'll be the board member over Provo High. So that's all I needed to say unless there's any concerns or questions about that. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
So
I
moved.
believe.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.